자, 그럼 본격적으로 버추얼 프로덕션의 미래를 알기 위해서 과연 버추얼 프로덕션을 기획 단계에서 그리고 촬영 단계, 후반, 그리고 전체적으로 전반적으로 봤을 때 저희가 고민해야 될 부분들은 무엇인지, 그리고 현재 기술 수준은 어느 정도까지 왔는지, 이런 부분들을 저희 기획에 모신 패널 분들과 함께 질문하고 대화를 나눠보는 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 첫 번째로 프리 프로덕션 단계에서 많은 부분들이 저희가 고려를 해야 되는데, 뭐 기획이라든지 아까 말씀하셨다시피 버추얼 프로덕션을 하기 위해서는 모든 어셋들과 씬 제작 이런 부분들이 후반이 아니라 앞단에 이루어져야 됩니다. 다시 말하면 어셋 제작, 뭐 로케이션 스카우팅 이런 부분들이 상당히 앞 단계에서 이루어져야 되는데, 이런 프리 프로덕션 단계에서의 버추얼 프로덕션을 준비하는 것이 전통적인 VFX 회사를 운영하시다가 어떻게 보면 되게 급진적으로 지금 변화하고 있는 상황인데, 이런 부분들을 어떻게 적응하고 계시고, 이런 준비 단계에서 일반적으로 진행했던 것과 특이하게 다른 점은 어떤 부분들인지 이걸 좀 질문을 드리도록 하겠습니다. 어떤 분이 먼저 대답을 해주실 수 있을까요?
I'll start with a little bit from myself. My colleagues that are on the call with us are deeply in the heart of virtual productions. We're just skirting around the very perimeter of it as a concept design and manufacturing company. But for us, what I love the thought around virtual productions is it demands thinking back at the beginning of the project. When we first started in the film industry, and for the first 15 to 20 years of our career, the sit-down meetings months before production starts and pre-production, where every part of the process is analysed and every decision is made early up, because the cost effectiveness, the organisation, the practicalities of that sense of discussion and planning and ideas and brainstorming and resolution of ideas was such a critical part of production, because very soon you're going to suddenly be in the shoot, and if you hadn't developed all of your tools, your components, your decisions, then you are going to be left short during the shooting period, because you hadn't solved these things in pre-production. Of course, with the arrival of digital post-production solutions, which have been so valuable to the expansion of filmmaking, but so many of those decisions are left till the end or left to a later date. There's a well-worn term, don't worry, it will be fixed in post, as if there is a magical button on every computer that says fix it in post. But of course, it takes just as much, maybe even more technical endeavor and planning and resolution of ideas for the digital effects artists of the world to be able to do their particular brand of filmmaking into the product that has been shot. What I love the idea of the virtual studio environment is it once again empowers and requests of that early pre-production period a level of resolution, a level of decision making that leads into a well-formulated, hopefully well-formulated and well-disciplined filmmaking process. And for people like us that are building things, making things, creating things, that takes physical labor in physically real time, the thought of that level of planning is very exciting. And couple that with the fact that the conceptual design work that you're doing in pre-production, you get to see as an actual element on set, offers filmmakers in the practical side of film of the film fraternity some really positive outcomes going forward.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you're saying there, Richard. I think uh, moving everything to the beginning means that those decisions have to be made early, and if something's, even if it's going on an LED wall, that all of that content has to be created and it's got to be made to work. And you're not going to build an entire world. You're going to build the section that you need to see for that LED wall. And so even from the CG content that we're making, everything needs to be decided early. I mean, we have a test we're doing at the moment, which is using a 1943 plane we have to film inside, and we're planning that in so much incredible detail because we only have so many square meters of LED wall, and we have to make sure that we can get every angle that we want to shoot at is going to work within that where we'll see the wall, so we don't have too many setups to change per day. And hopefully we're trying to do in camera VFX. So we've got to fit mocap cameras inside this plane, which is a real plane, so we can't cut the side open of it or anything like that. And like you would on if it was a movie prop. And we don't want to have to paint those out. So the whole thing is being planned out in meticulous detail, and before we start building any CG, never. And so I think that kind of works across the board. And I think it's interesting to see that you can't fix it afterwards. That's our thing. People say, well, it's LED wall, you can still do it as VFX shot. It's like, well, not really. You're going to make it really hard if your background's out of focus and the hair of the character is all blurred and it's going to be really hard to roto. You would do that as a green screen shot, and that would be really easy to make a VFX shot. But if you're going to try and turn it into a VFX shot afterwards, that becomes really hard. So yeah, I agree with everything there. A lot of things are decided earlier, and it kind of turns things on its head a little bit. But it's good in many ways.
Okay.
The like what I would add to it is, I think the like using Unreal as an example for a real-time engine has really made some of these workflows something that can actually happen now, because the whole benefit of using a real-time engine is that you're able to get parallax with the camera, so that it makes it look like you're actually in the scene. So I think there's some interesting challenges around that, because when if you're doing a post-production and you're putting in an environment, you've got a plate and you're putting in an environment in that plate, and that's pretty straightforward. When you're starting to look at putting it into like onto an LED wall, you start some of the challenges you're going to have are, how do you actually get it on the wall? How do you visualize what it's going to look like on the wall? So how do I, if I'm a layout artist and I'm putting a set together, how do I know like where the camera's going to be and what I'm going to see when I'm looking at the actor, and what am I going to see on the LED wall? So there's some challenges around getting that visualization happening. There's a lot of other things that are beneficial of this, that things like actors, actors are actually going to be able to see what environment they're in, and so they can actually get a little bit more in character and feel a bit more like they're part of something, versus I'm acting against a green screen. So there's some benefits there, aside from the fact that you're not getting the spill and you're getting proper reflections and you're getting proper lighting that is coming from the actual LED walls. And so I think that's a really important thing. And the other thing is, one of the things that I've always felt with when you're in a current production pipeline is that you do a bunch of stuff on in live action, and then months later you do a bunch of stuff in post, in visual effects, digital, and those worlds have always been sort of not very close together. And I think this has really been, or the stuff that I'm seeing is really great, because what it's doing is now you're because we're having to do more of the work up front, you're getting more collaboration between the physical side of it and the digital side of it, and it's happening all together. And so instead of these guys being completely separate and like they do a bunch of work here and then they later on they do work, they're going to be collaborating more. Because if you look at, for example, putting a physical asset in a shoot where you have an LED stage and you have a digital asset that's going to be on that physical wall, you need to look through your actual live action camera to look at the object that you're going to be seeing, the real life object. You need to be able to see what it's going to look like, because it's going to be lit by the LED wall. And then you need to see what the object is going to look like on the LED wall through the camera. And so there's challenges like that, which means these people need to collaborate a lot more. And like how lighting is going to be done, the physical lighting versus the digital lighting. And so I think that's a really cool thing, because there's a lot of talent that that you kind of bring together. And now these people can learn from each other, and I think that collaboration is going to be a big piece of making these things successful.
오케이. 그 잠깐 정리를 해보자면 그 벌처 프로덕션 VFX라는 영화 VFX라는 전통적인 파이프라인 안에서 저희가 프리 프로덕션 단계에서 어느 정도 계획은 하지만 사실 감독님들의 어떤 크리에이티브적인 자유도를 그 보장하기 위해서 촬영되고 나면 뒤쪽에 거기에 맞춰서 많은 부분이 변할 거라는 걸 저희가 알고 있고 그 뒤에 그 변하는 데 맞춰서 그냥 저희가 맞춰서 작업을 할게요. 뭐 이런 식으로 지금 해왔다면 사실 벌추얼 프로덕션 시대는 완전 시대가 바뀌고 있는 거죠. 지금 말씀하신 것처럼 모든 작업을 앞단에서 굉장히 철저하게 준비해야 되고 촬영 준비를 완벽하게 마칠 수 있는 이런 상황을 만들어야 되는 건데 요거에 관련해서 조금 기술적인 질문을 쇼원한테 드리고 싶습니다. 현재 이런 어셋들을 앞단에 만들다 보면 이 리얼타임 엔진에 올리기 위해서 기존에 저희가 후반에 렌더링하는 것보다는 훨씬 더 많은 최적화 과정을 거쳐야 되는데 그런 것들이 한두 개가 아니고 굉장히 많을 거란 말이죠. 아까 알렉스가 얘기한 것처럼 이런 부분들을 에픽게임즈에서 실제 프로젝트를 통해서 혹시 협업한 사례가 있으면 공개해 주실 수 있는 부분들이 있으면 잠깐 좀 사례를 말씀해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Right. So when it comes to like assets for LED wall, there definitely is planning that you need to do, but I don't see it as being vastly different than what you'd want to do for final renders as well. It's a little bit different because you do have to make sure things run at speed, and so you are going to want to be there's a lot of tricks and things you'll do from a texturing standpoint, from a modeling standpoint, in order to make sure that you're getting the speeds you want. So you're going to want your high res assets closer to the LED wall, and your lower res assets further from the LED wall. It's going to be the same thing for textures. So you want to be able to take advantage of high res textures close up, low res textures far back. There's going to be optimizations for the number of polygons that you're going to be using, the number of nodes that you're going to be using. And so there's a lot of, not a lot, but there's some definite learning around that. And the other side of it is there's also going to be optimizations that you're going to do, say, in the engine, as far as how much how much you want it to look real, as far as do you need to get like everything super real, or is the stuff further back? Can it be not quite as real from a rendering standpoint? I think what ends up happening is when you're putting that stuff onto the LED wall, there's going to be time like spent figuring out, again, looking through the live action camera and looking at what the sets are going to look like to make sure that you're getting the quality that you need. So I think there's a bit of learning that's going to have to happen there, and what's going to happen is there's companies that are going to say, hey, great, we want to build some assets, we want to put them on an LED wall. They're going to have to go through that learning process if they haven't done it in the past. And this is something like if you're coming from the gaming side, you'll have been doing like heavily optimized assets all the time. And then there's also other techniques that can be used that are doing things like baking out your lighting and stuff. So you would have your set, and before you'd actually shoot your live action cameras on it, you would do like a baking process, which would bake out all the light information, the shadows and everything, and put that on the wall, and then that will run a lot faster. So there's a lot of different technology that kind of going back to what Alistair said earlier about how much tech is being created in a very short period of time, where there's some new hardware and stuff coming as well, which will make things faster to render, or using deep learning to build out your images quicker and stuff. So some interesting stuff there.
Okay. 알겠습니다.